So welcome to the Node.js Community Benchmarking Working Group meeting for April 19th, 2019. We'll follow the agenda as posted in the issue, starting out with if anybody has any announcements that they'd like to share.
Should I talk about this new Octavian and Gabriel going to join our working group?
Sure. No, that's if you want to introduce them and talk about what you think they might be doing, that'd be great.
Okay. So you know Gabriel, he's definitely part of the whole Node committee, and he's going to help us attending this meeting going forward along with Octavian Soldia. They've been working on Node for some time with me. And since I'm getting a little pushed out to do something else, Octavian is going to be one of the person who's actually maintaining Node.js going forward, and he'll be kind of contributing to working group progress also.
Okay, I've been working with Udom, and who will be helping maintain DC. Yes, and participate. So you're getting pulled in a few different directions.
Yeah, so I'm still going to work on Node.js optimization, but more on optimization side. So, and the workload, Octavian is kind of taking over.
Okay.
And he has already fixed some issues raised by Jamie, like to support microservices mode of Node.dc.
Okay.
So he's actively working on Node.js right now.
Okay. Okay, so definitely welcome you two, and hopefully we'll see you at getting a lot of the stuff done as we move forward. Marks. Okay, so let's move on to the two issues on the agenda. The first one is investigate the time taken and number of benchmarks in core. I haven't managed to catch up with Gareth, so I don't have an update on that one.
But that's something we can discuss with now that Gabriel is there. Because we have been looking at some of the important micro benchmarks we have in Node.js. For example, the crypto workload, which are not too many. There are compression workloads, so we can maybe start there somewhere. Instead of now looking at, since the Garrett is not here, we need to start somewhere, and I thought that could be a good starting point.
Sure. It might be worthwhile at this point closing this issue and opening a new issue to, if you're going to start to do something like close this one and then open an issue that describes, the kind of things that you'll start looking at, or, Gabriel's going to start look at.
Yeah, I mean, for the Gabriel, the background is we were thinking of adding some of these internal micro benchmarks to our page as the nightly testing, and we were not able because there's just so many of them, and it takes, I think, multiple days to cover all of them. So we want to start with some small subset which are really, really important from the performance perspective, and add to our nightly results.
Right.
Okay, so one thing that I'm interested in then is, I see. Okay, so each one of those benchmarks would produce an entire chart like this, right?
Well, that's the thing, is that, like, if you know the micro benchmarks in core, there's a huge number of them. We can't run them all. Like, running them all takes something like 6 days or something, as I understand it. A very long time. You'd have way too many numbers for anybody to look at. So our challenge over the years really has been to say, is there something we can do to take those, because we have a whole bunch of good micro benchmarks, to take those and find either like a subset or a way to combine the numbers so that you get down to, like, we run for an hour or two or even 4 hours. And at the end of that, you have like one or some small number of numbers that you can chart and then, usefully look at.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Right. So, like, right off the top of my head, I can think of things like HTTP and stuff like that. But by their very nature, micro benchmarks are investigating a very, very small aspect of the whole code, right? So So I'm not sure if people can relate that. Like, okay, I'm sure a lot of people have HTTP as a very important component in their workload, right? So that might make sense.
I mean, that's an example. Whereas if like there's 100 HTTP benchmarks in there, can we somehow take all those numbers and put them into one, which if there's any major regression, that would catch?
Right. Okay, yeah. Well, there's I don't know. There's a difference between catching a regression and just charting performance, right? So like, yeah, it'll show up in the chart as a spike, either positive or negative. But assuming that there are no such spikes, then what can we meaningfully convey? Like, for example, let's say we're comparing ourselves to like Nginx, then what are some benchmarks that Nginx uses, to tout its
right.
capability.
We hadn't actually gotten that far. So it wasn't that we were looking to compare to competitors. It was more just to make sure we don't break things as we.
No, I don't necessarily mean that either. But what I'm saying is that we should report the results in a language that people are familiar with, and then comparing to competitors is just a side effect of that, right? Because now we're talking apples to apples kind of thing, and if people are familiar with looking at the performance of Nginx, then what does Nginx show them, so that we show them the same thing, because then people will understand, oh, okay, I don't know, requests per second or whatever Nginx does,
Yeah, so, but Gabriel, this was more of, for example, our crypto or even buffer API, right? So we had buffer unalloc or buffer unsafe before. Now we have buffer safe, right, by default, and people do see the performance going down, and some of those changes happening in some APIs. So we don't need to compare directly with anything else, but just how the node is progressing. That's all.
Right. Okay.
And after some time, maybe after we have enough data, or let's say 6 months, then we can start comparing if needed, if there's a need to something else. But right now we have like zero data about those internal micro benchmarks.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. And then we have way too many of them. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess we gotta kind of pick and choose and start building a data set. And I mean, can we get like feedback on it? Once we have this, like, can we do like a survey of what do you guys want to see?
I think we can. Once we have something, we can certainly go to the rest of the community and say, hey, does this make any sense?
How about,
we can even go beyond that and say, hey, we're starting, this is what we've done on this front. We can even like blog on it and try and get broader input. And
how about we take like the zero knowledge approach? Like I can put together like just a list of all the benchmarks and then just have a poll, and people can tick off what they want to see out of them. That can probably be done fairly efficiently.
But what is that going to get us? Like, right? Because it's even if, unless that number is like 10, it'll still be too many, right?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that the tick marks will not be distributed evenly among the hundreds of micro benchmarks that we have. So then, if a lot of people want to see, buffer allocation performance, then okay, we'll give them that. If a lot of people want to see, I don't know, hash creation performance, then we'll give them that, and then we'll stop at some point when it starts to get to be too long.
Yeah, one of the thing I'm basically kind of thinking is, let's say we added HTTP2 last year, but so what it does is, especially it compresses the response. So you see a huge reduction in the data transferred using the HTTP protocol. So if we can just start as small as that one, so since we added that as a new API, and then we kind of see the result of how the HTTP2. So anything new feature we add, anything new changes, like the buffer allocation was one thing, because that was a big change, right? We had deprecated the old behavior and started a new one. So something like that we should just start there, something very small.
Right. But I do think we need to make sure it's sustainable, right?
Yeah. Sustainable in what sense?
Well, like, those are two good examples where it would be interesting. But if over the years, if we add every one of those, we'll still be back to, that's how come we have so many good micro benchmarks, right?
Yeah.
So I'd be like, what I'd find would be really interesting is like an HTTP one, which would somehow take the best or the most important from our micro benchmarks, or even something else, and say, okay, yeah, we've got something which is watching the performance of HTTP, and hopefully we could then, like, HTTP2 could somehow be part of that, because that's clearly an important area. Because, like, having something that says, well, we know HTTP is an important functional area, let's watch the performance, that is good, because that's probably now down to like 10 different areas, right? But just trying to choose one, like add in the micro benchmark for something that's new, I think could get us into trouble over time, right? Like, it's just, how do you, it's the challenge of how you get it, enough, but not too much.
Well, I mean, we can sort of trim it after a while. I don't know. I guess if some things do not receive a lot of attention, like an overhaul or something, usually those are the things that tend to affect performance, right? But if the code hasn't been touched in years, then I think we can safely drop the benchmark and in favor of the ones that are more in flux, right? So that may be one aspect, and the other one is that we could make it sort of I don't know if a requirement, but a very strong suggestion for like any new like a strategic initiative, a major new feature, to also include benchmarks, and then they will be sort of featured for a while until this feature stabilizes. So at that point, you're still right, though, that it's a race. Like, if we take on too many new features, then the benchmark suite is going to start to get ever so heavy.
I mean, how many categories are there in the existing microbench suite?
Let's find out.
There are quite a few. Oh, another approach could be.
But is quite a few like 100, or is it like 10 top level categories?
The top level, probably 30, 25 to 30.
Okay.
We're there. Okay, let me check.
Maybe one idea that could be used is maybe seeing several benchmarks together and see which are more correlated. We had a feature or something like this. We can measure maybe statistically which one are more correlated and choosing from them something.
Oh, so
like what I could. Sorry, go ahead.
There are around 40, 45,
okay.
40 to 45 top categories. Sorry, Octavian, you're saying something.
Yeah. So maybe adding a feature and seeing maybe over time the behavior of all the benchmarks. If we see that they are correlated, all of them, then maybe that's a criteria of selection from them.
Okay, I have another suggestion. Extreme suggestion would be, we do all the benchmark what we have once a month, for example. We know it takes 6 days, right? Maybe it could take 7 days, but then just do once a month run for all of them.
But who's, like, my challenge with that one is, who's going to look at all those numbers and what are they going to do with them?
So for example, so these are, it's like a giving you trend, right, over time. So we are not getting the exact commit at that point, but we are getting some set month to month. Okay, this is how, whatever the changes happen during the month, this is the performance for any particular one. If someone makes a change, for example, I go and change something zlib, and I can go and just look at the zlib number between these two. My check-in is accepted, it integrated, and this is the performance. It's gone bad or it is better. So people then choose what they are interested. So we provide all of them and people decide what would be important for them. James might be interested in how the HTTP2 is doing month to month, for example. Or I might be interested in how the huge pages are doing from month to month.
Right. So I guess we would just leave that as text data, right?
Yeah.
We can also maybe have a look at well, I don't know. I don't know if we can establish a clear mapping between a source directory and benchmark directory, because we could look at what files were touched during that month and then just update some of the benchmarks. That could be an AI complete exercise. So I'm not sure if we can.
Yeah, that's a very difficult problem too.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, I think these are all good things to explore, and like if we can sort of write down what we think would make sense, you know, we'll work through the challenges. And like the idea of running it once a month, if we think that like having the data available, you know, in a text form once a month is useful, then, you know, that's probably doable, right?
Yeah.
Another thing we may want to consider is sort of making it like the CI, in that you know, people can trigger these benchmark builds, and so
that actually is in place.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So okay, but but when they do trigger these benchmark builds, is the data aggregated into these charts? You know?
Well, no. So basically, when you generate that, you get equivalent to running it locally. You can choose a subset of things to run. The benefit is you don't tie up your machine to run for, you know, a day or something.
Okay, right. Okay, all right. So I guess what I'm saying is, if we do this once a month, right, and we produce like one data point for each benchmark, right, that's going to be very few data points. But if people in the process of committing some change, they are aware that they need to check on the performance, and then maybe we can advertise that, please, you know, fire off this job in addition to the CI job, you know, then these additional points will show up on some of the charts, but, you know, at the end of the month.
The issue is that, like, you know, Unum just said there's 40 some odd categories.
Actually, I checked it's only 33, but
okay, so 33 categories, but in each of the categories there's a whole bunch of sub benchmarks.
Yeah.
So we're talking like, I don't know, a couple hundred numbers at least.
Yeah. Well, which means a couple of hundred charts, right? Because each one is independent in a sense.
And I'm not sure. I'd never thought that we would actually generate and show a couple hundred charts.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why
that's just too much data, right?
Much data, yeah. So that's why I thought if we do once a month, and let's divide this into two problems. One is actually running something once a month, so we have some data.
Yep.
And the second would be, how do we present it?
Yep.
Then let's divide into two problems, and then first one is easy. We can always write this one script and which runs all the workloads every first of a month, whatever the commit is. And the second problem, let's work on that, how we need to represent that data meaningfully.
Yeah, it's actually like a visualization problem too, because, you know, if we look at even a single benchmark, like let's say we look at hash stream creation. Okay, hash stream creation has like about 200 parameters that it checks, and for each one it produces a data point. You know, like you know, you run with 512 bytes, 1024 bytes, 2 megabytes.
Right.
You know, use the new API, the old API. It's a combinatorial explosion at that point.
Right.
So,
and go. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no. I just was going to say that it becomes a visualization problem at that point. You know.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be visualization. We need some way that people can consume it.
Yeah.
The visualization has just been our best guess. So like that's why, you know, I've always thought if we could boil those down to a few, you know, a few numbers that you could see a big change in, then you might know to go look for something.
Yeah.
But if it's like 500 numbers, you know, 500 charts, you know, and they go up and down is the other challenge. Is like they're not, you know, super consistent. So you really want to see something that says, the trend is not going down or whatever.
Can we like looking at the charts that we have, I see that most often they tend to sort of they tend to form this sort of knotty sort of line moving forward. So the points are clustered and they are moving inexorably forward as the time progresses, right? And so can we not write a tool that recognizes when there's a significant dip or so? I mean, you know, like you know, if there's a you know, if it exceeds, I don't know how many sigma of deviation, then you know, issue an alert or produce a chart or something like that.
That would definitely be useful. It's something that I always have in mind. We just haven't really had anybody to do it. Because that was the other challenge I was going to throw out, is that if we look at the current numbers, you know, it almost looks to me like we're lower on master for a number of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we haven't really had anybody watching it, like DCIS ops. It kind of looks like the blue is trending below the red.
Yeah.
Master versus 10.x, but we haven't had time to go look at that, right? So
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of data. Yeah, so okay, so correct me if I'm wrong then. Did I understand correctly that running all the benchmarks in those 33 directories is what takes 6 days?
it was something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but like it was a multi-days to run everything.
At least on I ran it on our server here, and it took 3 days. And
Right, there you
Octavian has done it the same. He has seen the similar thing.
Okay, all right, I see. Okay, yeah. So I mean, yeah, doing that once a month doesn't sound like such a bad idea, and at least recording the results, you know, for future analysis. Even if we don't have the analysis tools now, we can write them as we collect data, because, you know, there's going to be a chicken and egg problem. You write the analysis tool and it has no data to work with. So you know.
I just want to shout at give a shout at Octavian, because he has some deep and good understanding of some visualization tools. So that's why I said, if you divide this into two problems, one is just running it, at least having the data, and then visualization, how it can present best, you know. And I'm hoping Octavian's knowledge of different tools he has used, we can probably take advantage of that. What do you think, Octavian?
Thank you very much for this. Yes, indeed, I'm thinking about parallel visualization tool. So basically, if I understood correctly, the data is also related to n-dimensional points. N-dimensional points can be represented on parallel axes, and we can play with such devices.
Yeah.
I would like to share the screen, maybe to show some such devices, if it's okay. Oh, just a second, I will have to search for something. Please give me a second.
Yeah.
Parallel access view. Yeah, I think I found an image. So I don't know how to share here. Yeah, share the screen. Share the screen, share.
Yeah, there is a, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so do you see my screen? So what I'm thinking is maybe this type of coordinates. There are more advanced visualizations than this, but actually an n-dimensional point, it's actually a line. For example, if you follow this line, do you see my mouse?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
if you see this line, actually it's an n-dimensional point. So there can be different features. I don't know, sepal width, sepal length, petal width, petal length, or I don't know. I think this is something for flowers or something like this. But in any way, it's possible to characterize different behaviors. There's also a tool that is called I don't remember now, but it's a tool that, for example, we can mark a region, for example, the blue region, and then everything gets colored in blue. Think about everything is in one color, and then with blue we separate some things. So some stuff like this can bring a lot of understanding. Maybe even if you put a lot of data, we can understand fast.
Yeah, so it can give overall trend for the particular set of numbers, basically.
Another feature that can be done interactively, we can change axes. So basically we can put axes that are less relevant. Let's say all the lines are parallel, maybe it's less relevant there. But if there are some axes which are important, then we can zoom in. So these axes can be moved in some of these types of tools.
So I think with Octavian's knowledge, I think we can definitely do something with the data. Let's have some data, and then we'll solve the visualization problem. That's what I'm thinking as a solution.
Yeah, that makes sense to explore. Definitely, if you have time to explore some of those and propose some good ones, that'd be great.
do we have the infrastructure for doing this like multi-day run, or do we just do this in house and then if we have something?
There are a couple machines that Intel donated that are hosted at Nearform that we can do those runs on.
Okay.
Okay.
We don't want them to be like running while we run all other benchmarks, right? Node.js and the Acme.
Right. Those are run though on the soft layer machine. So I think we could kick them off on those two Intel ones, or dedicate one of them to do that kind of stuff. So I think it would be possible.
Okay. So should we take
a lot of fun.
So should we take that as one of the solution to run them once a month and then divide into two problems?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you could write up an issue that says, "Hey, here's the proposal of what we should do," then sounds good as a next step to me for sure.
Okay. Okay, I'll go. Yeah.
I still think that it might be useful to parameterize the job by benchmark, like for example by directory, because we have 33 directories, right? And so that the collaborator who lands a PR that has the potential of influencing the performance of certain benchmarks or the numbers on certain benchmarks, that collaborator should have the option of firing off a job that normally only runs once a month for everything. At the moment it lands for that particular subset, and then that month's data will be slightly richer in one subset. We'll have like an in-between point where for that subset, whereas we don't for everything else. What do you think?
If you can figure out how to make that happen, it's not a bad thing. Like it is already parameterized, so that there's a job under, if you go under all, there's definitely a benchmark. I'm looking for it. There's node micro benchmarks. Let's see where that is. Where's the master one? Benchmark node micro benchmarks. That's one where you can go there, you can take a look at it, you can filter it, you can do it by like running for one or more categories. I know there was something that Anna wanted to update to it, which didn't quite get done. So I'm sure if you found that issue and help with that, she'd be happy. I thought last time I was waiting for her, but we kind of go back and forth where she's waiting on us to do something and then I ask a question or whatever. So anyway, but that lets you basically say, okay, I'm going to run a subset of the benchmarks and get the results. If basically, I think what you're saying is we'd want to then say, if that's run, then push that data somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, this running of everything will need some sort of central store that will have this historical data, right? And right. I guess the data source could be the same as it is for the existing charts, right?
Yeah, I mean, today we have a small SQL database on the original benchmarking machine. Nothing very sophisticated, where we basically just push in, like there's a chart ID. You should probably read through, like in the benchmarking repo, there's a whole description of what we have, that, how the current charts and stuff are generated and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that yet.
So but you can read up on that. I mean, what's there is pretty rudimentary. So whether, when we start to pump in a whole bunch of numbers, you might need something more sophisticated, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think I'd suggest we actually start with something separate, just so that we don't mess up the existing benchmarking stuff. And then once we have that, we can figure out, can we make the infrastructure common or whatever.
Yeah. I can definitely read up on how the infrastructure is done, and we can start with the same infrastructure, and then see if it scales up, and if it does, we can reuse it. If not, then we need something completely different for this particular set. Okay, sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's certainly lots of different, I mean, and I still think it's worth considering it. And as we go through this, running it once a day, we may get more insight into, well, how could you come up with, instead of a couple hundred, like 500 numbers, come up with one with 33 numbers, which are the 33 categories, right?
Yeah.
because that's immediately more consumable. Or, you know, maybe you go and look at one chart if you change something in HTTP, and it's like, okay, well, that chart isn't off totally broken, so we're okay. Like, that may be wishing for something you can't get to, but that's kind of always what we sort of thought would be really nice.
Well, if we did that, correct me if I'm wrong. For each category, we basically have to take each benchmark in that category and sort of assign it a weight to see how much it can pull down the whole thing or push up the whole thing.
Exactly.
So coming up with those weights is going to be quite a thought-provoking exercise, I suspect.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's then like, how much does each one of those things vary, right? Like, if they don't vary at all, and you weighted them in some way that, you know, I don't know,
Exactly.
you just want to be recognizable when there's a change, right?
Yeah.
Like, because even from the existing charts, you can see there's a fair amount of variation up and down.
Yeah. And there are some clear patterns, which is great.
Yeah, you can look at them and say, hey, well, like, this version was actually better than this previous version, right? Or worse.
Yeah, there are some clear variations there. So yeah, it's a good exercise.
Okay, so I'm going to say Gabriel is, and Octavia are going. I probably, is it Octavia? I'm not sure I heard quite right.
Octavia.
Octavian with an N, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me get that right. We're going to review and write up a proposal with next steps. Does that sound right?
Close the previous issue. Okay.
So I will, why don't I do that right this instant so that we don't forget it. Closing, we have. To write okay. Okay, so that sounds good. So that's our next step on that one. Look forward to seeing that. I think it should be good. The next one is updating the charts for Node 12.x.
Yeah, that is something I think is simple to do. I think I can do it.
Okay, so do you have all the information you need to do that? Do you?
Yeah, there are, I think, 2 files I need to modify, right? There is I forget the name, but once I think I have done that once before.
Okay, I mean, I think we need to create a new job.
Yeah.
Which will run for 12. And I thought maybe if we have time, you know, we could do that. I don't know if you have access to be able to create a new job. So maybe I can create it and then walk you through changing.
I never created a job before, that's for sure. So I don't know that about that.
Yeah, working group members, generally, we can set it up so that you can modify jobs, but not necessarily create them. So I think maybe like once we finish the meeting, we can go and do that. And then you probably can do the rest of it.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're going to do that, that's good. I have nothing too much more to talk about on that front. Were there other topics or issues you wanted to talk about this week?
Yeah, the require one, I still cannot reproduce it, and I think we still see the regression, right? So I don't know what's going on with that workload.
Yeah. Okay. So you got it on the machine, but you still can't see. You can't recreate it even on the same machine.
Yeah. So maybe we should just revert back to the change and tag. And I don't know. I mean, how? So is that the benchmark one correct? Then that's my next question was, because what it does is you do a require and basically get kind of cached the name of the module, and what we do is we undefine that entry into the cache. I think that is the one of the benchmarks. So I don't know whether is that the correct way to remove that cached entry.
I don't have any reason to believe that that's not the right way to do it. I guess the bigger problem is if you can't recreate it, it's not really the test problem, right? Necessarily.
Yeah. So remember we had require first, and then we had require
Right.
new, right? And then the performance. There, I don't see why. Is there a way we can run them totally separately? So that whatever the impact of that benchmark.js has may not have.
Separately, I forget. I haven't looked at it for a while. Like in terms of running them, are they running as one node under one node executable?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it probably would require some tweaks to the code, but we can definitely have things run like to like invoke node twice.
Yeah, because when I do that separately, I consistently get what we expect.
Right. Okay. Well, that we can change. Does it require changing the code in the repo or anything like that?
So since both those benchmarks, I mean, those functions are in the same file, we need two separate files then, right?
I guess it depends on, yeah. So what file is it that actually runs the
RequirePerf. Okay, let me see. Require.
Like here, I can go to the actual benchmarking.
There, experimental. Node API. I think that's part of the Node API. Yeah, RequirePerf.js.
Okay, so that we would need another two that just run one of the two things, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So if you can separate run benchmarks into two, one with require.new and one with require.cache, and then somehow combine those numbers to show it in one chart.
Well, there are already two different charts. So here, I'll share if I share my screen, you should be able to see, this is the part that runs require benchmarks. It says, okay, I'm going to run this, which is require, and it says it runs this RequirePerf.js, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then based on the result, it strips out this require new, the require cached.
Okay.
And they're actually published as two separate things. So if there was like a RequirePerf,
yeah, new perf and require.cache
right.
perf, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you make two of those, then we can tweak the jobs to run two things and put them into two different results and parse out the results.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that would be fine. Like if that helps make it clearer and makes it more straightforward, then I think that wouldn't be a bad thing to try out at all.
Okay. So that's my suggestion for that problem.
Okay. So I guess in terms of doing that, I think you have access to configure these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether we want to do it on the live job or experiment with something else, we could figure that out.
Okay.
But even as part of like creating the one for 12, maybe that's if you're going to have time, you could set up 12 to use the two new things, and then we could backport that to the other ones.
Okay. Okay, I'll try. Yeah.
Okay. Any other things you want to talk about?
And Jamie had suggested to do this microservices. Since he's not here, I don't know exactly what he was thinking of contributing that to a node benchmarking, but I don't know what his plans are now.
Okay, well, I guess we'll hope. I think his student showed up at the last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he'll show up at the next one. We can ask him.
Okay. But
either that or we'd have to like email him and ask him what's going on. But.
Okay. So, but do you think that microservices mode is important? Is this good to add?
I definitely think microservices is an interesting thing that Node is used for. So yes.
The reason I'm saying Octavian is kind of working to make it better, so it can be easily used. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that makes sense to me. Okay. Same proposal to split out. Yeah, running them separately, that makes sense, because maybe something's changed so that running in the same one means that you get them both cached, or who knows
Yeah,
what. But,
that's very weird. It was very weird.
okay. Okay, any other things?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, so I think at this point we'll stop the stream, and if you want to hang around, we can do this. I think at least create a new jobs for 12, and then make sure that you've got everything else that you need to push on that one.
Okay.
Okay, so thanks for everybody who came and everybody who watched, and we'll either see you in GitHub or at the next meeting. Thank you very, very much.
All right, talk to you all.